Okay. We should be coming through live. We are back on Sydney Harbour. This time, it's absolutely bucketing down, as you can see from out there. And I'm not sure how long we'll have to wait in here. We've taken a while to get things set up. We actually even have a Starlink trying that because I want to see if that works in the country. But what we're going to talk about today is also the redemption of thinking, again, by Rudolf Steiner. We're going to do our reading from that book, if we can find a place that is dry. But where we are, as you'll see from the map there, is in Vaucluse, which is the eastern suburbs of Sydney. It's on a thing called South Head. You can see out the window there. Coming to you, might look a bit crisper today as it's in high resolution. But hopefully we can walk out of this soon because I don't have a wet weather cover for this. But we're going to be talking about the redemption of thinking. And we're going to walk up to an estate that's right on the coast, a historic estate. Which is owned by the national parks now. And so we're going to walk up there if we get a chance, because I don't know how long this rain's going to be. But there's the harbour bridge out there, as you can see, if you can see. But it is pissing down, as they say. So I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to walk through any of this. Maybe we can go location to location, or cover to cover, and just see how we go. How is everyone doing? All right, the rain stopped for a moment. Let's just give this a go. Let's just launch out into it. We're walking north, making our way onward to the edge of South Head. There's a lighthouse and beautiful period Victorian buildings there for us to take a look at today. And while we walk and hope we don't get rained on, I might have to shove this under my coat to protect it from the rain. We'll have a wet weather cover next time. But while we walk and talk, what we can also talk about is the essence of tradition. The essence of... Ooh, it's starting to rain again here. Squishy squashy on my feet as I walk through this. The essence of tradition. Honour your mother and your father. And as I've talked about before, or as I just mentioned, rather, we're going to, and here we are here on the Sydney coast, as you see it emerge from the back there. No one here, that's the benefit of coming out in absolute terrible weather, is that we at least get the place to ourselves, and the kookaburras and the birds to ourselves. But here it is. This is prime real estate that the federal government bought back long ago in 1918. This whole front, all the harbourside areas, was a scheme to buy back the foreshore so people could have it as space. Think about it sort of like the National Trust, but the government did it. And so let's keep walking here. See how far we get before I have to shove this in my jacket. I'll check the chats in a sec, but hopefully everyone is doing well there. But what is it? What is honouring? Hopefully that's not too noisy there with the wind. What is honouring the mother and father? As we make our way to our reading spot, that we'll do our Steiner reading today. What is that? Well, we've talked about it before. It is, think about everyday existence. We're going to talk about it in a bit of a different way today than we did in the lecture on this, but the knowing space that you are is your memory, your knowing, your goals and projections in the future are kind of a everyday mother and father. They are a surface parent though. That's not the honouring of the father and mother we're talking about. Also not even biologically. That's not what we're talking about. But also, we're not just talking about the everyday personal being that isn't the essential mother and father that we're trying to make contact with. Also, what Heidegger calls what has been, what Jung calls the collective unconscious. These things are of more essence, but they're not fundamentally outside. They're not fundamentally eternal. They're the past, but they're mixed in with the derivative waters. They're still temporal. They are collective, but they're not the thing we're trying to re-establish vertical heredity with. They're still horizontal heredity. So when Heidegger talks about what has been, yes, that is partly historical being that transcends just the personal, because you extend beyond yourself and so does memory. But that is still not what is essential. That's what pagans think is it's the first beginning. They want to go back to that as the ancestral principle. But that is merely what has been. There are some goods in it, but it's a mixed, it's from the fall, it's temporal, historical archetypes. It's not the eternal. And so ultimately it's something to actually reach the eternal proper and the true Holy Spirit. What a view, eh? We have to go further to establish vertical heredity, even though there are things to be found down there, as Jung discovered in examination of these depth layers of the past. There's good things there, ethnic group, heredity, the things of the past of worth are still there, that are worth retaining. They're not the truly essential that will be resurrected at the end of time, because those are the events of love. Those are the events of, that's what primordial tradition is. That's revelation. There are things of what has been that are not of revelation, that are not the second wine. They're not, but they still hang around. And what is another expression of this? Archetypes, historical archetypes, these forces of the unconscious from the past, these forces of the unconscious from what has been that still remain. But fundamentally they are part. Yes, they're deeper, but they're like a push of spiritual necessity from what's already occurred, but they still live. They are part of what is called the eternal recurrence of the same. So when the Greeks are talking about there's these patterns, these cycles that repeat again and again, and that's what time is. That's not the true eternal. The true eternal is the eschaton, that everything is moving towards. Christ, of course. The true eternal is He. And so it's important to understand that. When I did a lecture on this, I was talking about in re-establishing us to the primordial tradition, or what is high time and what is low time. I only really articulated everydayness and our goals and our memory as the surface being that we are, but deeper down there's still something that also has to be overcome, which is in the unconscious and the archetypes and these other influences. These other influences I'll get into, but I'm going to check the chat and see everything's working. Astrological influence, heredity, the archetypes, biology, all these different pushes, they're all deterministic. You know, when people talk about, is life deterministic? If an intellect knew all forces that set nature in motion, then the future, just like the past, would be present before its eyes. That's a Laplace's demon. That would be true if it wasn't for the thing outside temporality. The thing that's before all positions and all forces. That's what the eternal is. It's outside all positions, all forces, all causes. And so that means, right, if it's outside all causes, that means it's not deterministic. It's something that ingresses from somewhere that can't be predicted. And even though you can't predict astrological influences, you can't predict the archetypes or any of this stuff, it's still spiritual necessity. Necessity means it's a push it's a condition that pushes from the past. But there is a true future which is this outside that. And so it's not just the everydayness that I often talk about. It's not just this subjective presencing that we are, that's based on our memories and what has been our heredity and our personal unconscious. What also gives form to what we are is depth, concepts which have built up since Aristotle, is archetypes beneath that. The whole memory of time is back there, but not all of it is of eternal value. It's mixed in. It's the mixed waters under the firmament that need to be understood, dealt with. Okay, video's looking good. Thank you, Chris Doe. And we'll keep walking then, now we know that. I read, so I'm reading the chats, everyone. Feel free to send them through. We'll find a static place, but apparently the video looks good. Not sure how well this Starlink's going to go, but it's part of the equation. But we've only got one mobile connected to this, so hopefully it keeps looking good. But okay, so what were we saying? What has been? So when I did that lecture on what was it? On the tradition, like we've been talking about, when I did that, beautiful view, huh? I didn't go in enough detail to mention also that, obviously I've talked about this before, but that there is this other element of the collective unconscious that has to be dealt with, that the pagans look to. The first beginning. The first beginning still influences us. The first Greek time still influences us. The psychotechnology, for one thing, it all kind of mixes up together in what you could call human logos, which was established since the fall, and its self is its God, as the serpent promised, right? You will be as gods, but what that really means is that you'll be self-sufficient and have this growing experimental space where you grind out slowly, little by little, what things are. Whoa, that's a bog I just stepped in. Savage. Okay, my foot doesn't feel wet though, so that's lucky. Good. Onward. And see what I do for you guys? I can do the stream anyway, even in terrible weather. Onward. And I don't know what's better to do, to watch me as I go around or to look forward. I guess we'll just do it between both of them. Hopefully the picture's still looking good and coming through. And so, yes, this what has been. Firstly, okay, Aristotle, for instance. Heidegger talks about him when he's, and this has contributed to how being looks to us now and still does right now. It's not just the personal and arbitrary memory and everydayness, but also what he did and what other philosophers did fundamentally also changes things. And what Heidegger's talking about when he talks about Aristotle's basic concepts is there's a difference between Aristotle, when in Aristotle's metaphysics he talks about the difference between the words dialectic, rhetoric, and philosophy. He says rhetoric talks about the thing but doesn't get to what's essential about it. It doesn't look for what's essential, it talks about it. Philosophy is, he says, exact, really. What it really is a defining of what presences itself. But there's another word that he defines, and he says, dialectic, he says, and Plato also speaks of this, is a first run through of what logos speaks. He says this is serious as the ultimate meaning is serious, but it's only a first run through. And so what's philosophy then? It's a more than first run through. What are they doing? It's exact pushing. That's what he thinks philosophy is. And then ever after, that's what a abstract philosopher was. Now traditionally, a philosopher, as we talked about many times before, the traditional meaning is, no, you're also a mystic, which Plato understands because he at least has a memory of the things. Of inspiration. Heraclitus, it was inspiration. That's not what Aristotle's doing. He's doing this defining, but we don't want that, do we? We don't want the thing that comes after the first run through. We want this dialectic. So they mean basically the same thing. We want to experience primordial concept making. We want to experience, because Aristotle defines what a concept and what a category and what judgment is. He defines things, and forever after, you're sort of stuck with that defining. We want that first description that he says. We want to get to the things themselves, to experience philology. What's philology? Love of logos, the word, the original word. So more what we really are doing is not what philosophy has become, but to love or move towards the original sending. Not from the perspective of having all these concepts already and reading this thing called philosophy and what it's supposed to be and the subject, but actually to experience how they experienced it, or at least how original concept, or getting a sense of how it forms properly, not through the doing, as it happened for him. That's what we want, or else we're stuck with 2,000 years of build-up that changes how being presences to us. And so that's key fundamentally actually of Heidegger's project. And here is Glenside Mansion on Shark Beach, worth checking out. A bit of what has been Greycliff, rather. Greycliff. Pretty, man. Not a sunny day, but I kind of like, maybe it's some of the Scottish heritage, but I quite like the rainy weather sometimes. It brings a starkness. It depends on the landscape, but sometimes the contrast, if you're in a contrasty landscape, when you lower the light, it actually can make it more brooding and more enjoyable, more I don't know, more meaningful, I think. Pretty, no? You get to a point of, you're still going back towards the first beginning. Oh, this is interesting. I don't think anyone lives here, though. I don't know what that is. It must be just the caretakers. Oh, cool. We can walk through here. It would still be the say this is the Gothic style. Yeah. To some degree, anyway. It's got some... Yeah, I'd say that's at least somewhat the Gothic style. Anyway, there's a plaque here. You can read it. Huh. I missed some plaques before we got to this one, the water storage or something. Let's see. And so even what Aristotle was dealing with, the Heraclitean logos, what inspired at that time was still, I mean, it's based on the first beginning. It's not, Christ hasn't incarnated yet to fix the issue, to save us. It's a logos, it's a wording that at its ground is struck by lightning, by a different kind of fire, by a war of all against all. And you see this in the rigid crystallization that Aristotle achieves, this slow death that comes from more of an inspiration through this intellectual, metaphysical definition. What is defining something? It's necessary and sufficient conditions. It's crystallizing around it. That can be powerful, that can be useful. But is it true? Ultimately, no. It's part of the picture. Part of the picture. And that's what love incarnate incarnates, to show the true full picture. Even Plato's Good, True and Beautiful are philosophical abstractions of the way, truth and life, and the good is a philosophical abstraction of love. But there's a cafe here, I might get a drink or something. But so if we're saying what's the essence of tradition, is it looking back to Aristotle? No. It's before, always contemporaneously before, even before the first speaking of the Greeks, even before temporality. That's what we're talking about. I don't know if I want to walk through this. I'll just jump. And there is a sense in that our schools, our education system is kind of flooded with this. And so when Heidegger says ancient Greece is our future, that's what he means. Ultimately, that's not true, but it's true of, it's a push from the past. As you see it in the education system, it's the way we articulate. We're still Aristotle in modernity. We're still operating like Aristotle. Not all of us, because of Christ, of course, comes to fix the imperfection and the problem. Partly, that's part of the reason. But this looks nice, hey? Just saw the camera. Looks nice. was I saying? Yeah, so Aristotle. This is called Shark Beach. I looked up on Google. No one here, of course, because it's raining today. What was I saying? Aristotle. I was on a roll there. Yes. Ancient Greece is our future. And these statements are confounding. We think, what the hell is he talking about? But it makes sense when we understand that the defining that Aristotle was up to projects into where we are now. But simply because of the way we operate too, because we filled our education system with Greek metaphysics, the classics, all that stuff that's taught is constantly throwing back there. And too much, actually. It should be from the true ground, Christ. And so, Christ doesn't come from Aristotle. Doesn't come from the Greek tradition, the ancestral principle. As he says when he arrives, he says, before Abraham was, I am. I am. Incredible. Of course, Ehi, I am, is the name that Moses was told to tell them who he was. And Ehi, I am. Also in the language, in Hebrew, it means I am, I was, I will be at the same time. Mostly with the futural in it. And so it was formally said, and I think I've talked about this before, say these historical archetypes, these temporal archetypes, or even Adam, in the same way the Hebrews would say that, I go to rest in the bosom of Abraham. And then you go to Hades, right? Hades is the collective unconscious. You could think about it like that. It's still temporal, and so before Christ, when people would die, that's what would happen. And that's why the Greeks would say, better to live here now than to be reabsorbed into this Hades. And Christ went down there, though. And since he incarnated, there's a way to go and rest with him outside Abraham, outside the ancestral principle, the true beginning, not the first beginning, which is Luciferic, understandably, but the true outside. Before the beginning and after the end is the way you could sort of think about it. Before the beginning and after the end. So people don't get it. They don't really... there was a pagan person I messaged on Twitter. They don't really see how the eternal works in that way, is that contemporaneous. So you get a sense of it when Christ said, before Abraham was, I am. Well, why wouldn't he say before Abraham was, I was? Because he never was. He always is, eternally, outside. That's why. And so you go, how could they possibly be so metaphysically advanced? We say when we read the Bible and see him saying that. Well, yeah, because it's God. I'm going to just grab a soda. Check you guys here for a minute. Oh, I'm going to hold it, actually. I'll hold it so it's not in their faces. Good, thanks. How you going?
Thank you.
Can we just get a Coke Zero?
Yeah. Coke Zero. Can you just on the screen whenever you're ready, please? Good to see you again. Yep. Good to see you, mate. Ciao. All right.
Thanks. What is happening? $5. What is happening? Like a can of Coke should be $3-4 maybe, most. Not $5. Too much. Anyway. Oh, it's starting to rain. Wonderful. Oh dear. I might just go wait under here for a bit. Cool. It gives us a bit of a repose. What's the word? Gives us a... Oh, okay, we can wait under here. Oh wait, no, it seems to have stopped. You can continue. Let's have a bit of this first. I think we'll keep walking. We're going to walk to Watson's Bay and then we're going to sit down and read some Steiner. If there's a seat that's not completely wet. You can watch me while I drink my cup. It's a bit of a ferry down the pass. Yeah. So what were we saying? Should have a bottle. Before Abraham was, I am. Oh, okay. Before the first beginning to contemporaneous, always. And so what happens? What are these ingressions? What are these ingressions from the eternal? I guess we'll walk this way. We haven't been this way yet. They are the waters above the firmament. Because the waters down here are mixed. The waters down here are two principles we see in operation. We see dark principle and light principle. Of course, this is in temporality. There's two things operating. Ultimately, those things are it's the absence of the good. But in this realm, two principles are operating. I don't think I can hold this Coke at the same time. I'll just try leaving in my pocket and see how much. See how we go. And so we're after the waters above the firmament that are not of this first beginning we've been talking about. Remember, where we want to go is before the first beginning, where the true home is, the true home. And so thankfully, after the fall, the Lord didn't leave us in this condition. He sent His only begotten Son to save us. And so how do we get in touch with those uncorrupted waters? The second one. What's this whole process that we've been talking about? Loving all. But what is that also? That is the true tradition outside of time. Again, this is talked about by people like Gwenon, the primordial tradition. But it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. Perennialism isn't true. Because it's the God of love. And there's several issues. There's three different issues with, and we've talked about this before. There's three different issues. The problem with the Jays, yes, they understand that it's love. But when you deny the incarnation, you have the problem in your mysticism of the issue of exaltation. exaltation means you become alienated from the world, right? You still understand God's love, but you become alienated from the existence. Which you can even see in the behavior of the Hasidim. You can see this. And actually a really prominent Christian mentioned that he'd been contacted by them and they've started to realize that the incarnation was Jesus. You know, take that as you will, maybe they're being tricksy or something. But they have started to recognize that the true incarnation is Christ. But they're just trying to figure out how do we do this with our own tradition. Because it's quite a shock for their mystics to be saying suddenly that Christ is true. So take that with a grain of salt. I don't know whether that's true. I don't know how many of them it is. But anyway, so that's exaltation. That's the problem, right? They got alienated. And why is that? Of course, because Christ, his mission is saving. The beatific vision that becomes possible with him is him only. It has to be the incarnation because it means that consciousness, it's a valid twofoldness. Ultimately one essence of love, which presupposes a loved lover, loved, love itself, and loving itself. Two substances, ultimately one essence. But what that means is that it's a legitimate twofoldness. That's what the beatific vision is that it's a full recognition of our divine humanity. You can see where the problem and the mental illness will come in from mystics who deny the incarnation. They don't have this way. And so they might have experiences or allowed some experiences of God, but it leads to mental illness because it's not the way. Those that came before me are thieves and robbers. It's still true. If you deny him, it's still a problem. It's not the same religion. If you deny him, that's why you see there's so many references of mental illness of their mystics declaring themselves as the incarnation. And the other three problems are the problem of exaltation's one of them, and there's the issue of intoxication of nature mysticism, when you divide the line between the object and the subject. Dionysian orgies. And then there's the issue of, what would you call this? Megalomania, which comes from the East. This is their problem, where, as the Bhagavad Gita, I think, says, that Brahman is God, or I am Brahman, Brahman is God. I can't remember the exact quote. But what it does is you attribute to the transcendent self, you attribute divinity. When it's just one amongst many other transcendent selves, and ultimately the transcendent self of transcendent selves, well, who's that? Well, listening to this channel long enough, you can get Christ. The I am behind the I. Behind. But if you go their way of depersonalization, we'll never find him, never meet him. And so there's all these issues. And what's the other issue? Well, they are the three. They're the three. And that accounts for everything. It accounts for the people that understand its love. It accounts for the people that don't understand its love and that depersonalize. And the issues with that. And the intoxication of dividing the line with peyote, or I've talked about this in lectures before as well. But it just goes to show you how difficult it is to get up rightly. How difficult is it to avoid all these issues? Megalomania. The megalomania of the inflation that happens when you encounter the spirit. There's serious dangers with that. That's because there is a way. It's called the narrow way. That's why it's very difficult. And thankfully, he came to show us. And it helps us if we acknowledge him. He'll help you navigate that way. so this primordial, this tradition is the help, is the salving, is the saving. Its solution is saving, not fleeing upward like the winged serpent, which is a metaphor for the East. Not fleeing upward. Why is it fleeing upward? Because it's abandoning of conscience. Even if there are preparatory practices of that, it's still not attaining forgiveness for sins. And you can tell this by the East's understanding of the solution to the problem, which is to withdraw from it, is that to dwell in the waters of nirvana in peace, to escape the reincarnation, the woe of endless reincarnation. Well, isn't there a treatment though? Yes, there is a treatment. That's the whole point of saving. And the way that the East entirely considers reality, and we've talked about this before as well, the way they consider it is, think about it. There's what they do, and this is both Buddhism and yogiism. What they do is it's monism for one ultimate substance. And so what that ends up being is to attribute, this is Maya, the whole thing. There's no legitimacy in any of it. The presencing of us as individuals is an illusion. And so what do? Okay, when we incarnate, let's say, we have an ego. That's who we love and care about mostly. What they do is, when we look at other people, we don't attribute to them really the same reality that we do to our own presence, at least pre-Christianity anyway. Just even how you see it. If you raise in will to power, yes, you know people are human, yes, you know they probably have an subjective experience like you do, but you value and love yourself more than some random on the street, don't you? So they are kind of like a shadow. And you are the thing that matters most. And so what the Eastern solution is, because it's all an illusion anyway, is to treat the self as the same as all the others. It's a shadow, just like everyone else. So it's a devaluing of everything, of the self included, to be able to have the experience of the transcendent self. And so what's that? It's a cynicism for everything then. That's what occurs. We don't do that. We don't do that. Why? Because it's a betrayal of the first love. It's a betrayal of the first name. It's a betrayal of the first mission, of what we were sent here to do. To come back to Him. It's a betrayal of the prodigal son story. We're not to just flee into nothing. What do? It's the opposite of that. We check in. It's a loving of all. Starting with loving the divinity. So fundamentally, you can see how very different that is. And it's not an illusion. There is an illusory element, yes. There is a Maya element. But fundamentally, the truth of all the facticity around us is revealed with our connection to Him. Then it becomes realized. Because He is the ultimate truth. Because He's been here before and incarnated, redeemed and resurrected the whole thing. And so that's fundamentally the difference. And so for us, that's the beatific vision. Yes, we have ecstasy and ecstasy. They have ecstasy, but ecstasy is only the ground of the subject. It's the peace right before the breath of God. Nirvana, the peace is right before the breath of God. It's the stilled waters of It's the stilled waters of consciousness, completely still. There's a might as well walk up to this Vaucluse house here. The stilled waters of consciousness in peace. You could even think about it like Sophia on her own, the receptive principle on its own. And what happens is consciousness is sort of dissolved into the monad, you could say. It's not the loving beatific vision in the face of God, which is now possible because of Christ. And so Tomberg is very nice about this. He carefully crafts his book. There's a period house up here I thought we'd have a look at. It's called Vaucluse House. If you want to look it up on Google, that's where we're going. But at least we could have a look at the outside of it. Looks like there might be a wedding on. I'm not sure. Might be up there. Probably. I just wanted to see what this was. And so, yeah, let's have a look. Might as well. Oh yeah, it's just a cottage or something. What were we saying? We were saying the beatific vision. That's legitimate twofoldness, which means it's not an illusion. When God is present in you, when it's Christ who lives and acts in you, it's not an illusion. It's legitimate twofoldness and love around us. Reality is love. Being's part of it, but when you just seek being, you end up in the monad and consciousness. And like I've talked about before, the prenatal state is what you experience. You experience the dissolution of consciousness, not the dissolution of being, for the created to be revealed. The Christian difference is it's the ground of the subject and object at the same time. What the yogi does is, maybe that was appropriate for that time before Christ came, but it's not appropriate now, as Steiner talks about. It's not something to be done anymore. Because Lazarus is the new initiation. He showed how the monastics are to do it. Those became, and I've said this hundreds, it looks like there's a wedding on here. But we're going to go and have a look anyway. Be nosy. Oh, you got a bathroom as well. Actually, there's a bathroom right here. Alright everyone, give me a moment. I'm just going to unplug the camera. It'll go to a standby. bump it or something. Seems to be working. Alright, maybe we're back now. It's threatening to rain, so I might have to run inside. It's 6:20, that's it. Is oh, that's raining pretty heavily. Oh dear. Okay, it's sort of a bit dry under this bamboo. Don't get eaten by a shark, Chris Stokes says. Another Coke sponsorship, lovely view. Yeah. See how we go. See if the rain stops and we'll keep going. How's this looking? I'm gonna have a look. Sorry everyone, we're just stranded by the rain here to protect the camera. It's already got water on it. Hopefully it doesn't mess it up. Check that everything's still working and we'll get back to our... We need to find a location actually to talk about Stein. I mean, maybe that could be here. It's already 3:38. Maybe we could go inside. In fact, maybe that's what we'll do. Shit. Oh look, the signal's still great though. Looks good. Alright, well, I'm going to run for it. Maybe try get to this. You're on. Gotta imagine having your wedding day on when this is going on. Just pissing down. Terrible. Oh well. Maybe it's a blessing for the marriage. Alright. I'm not 100% sure what we're going to do here. We might just go for it and just see if it stops. Just keep walking. Alright, we're gonna go. Oh, I can get a quick look at it from here. At least look at the front of the house. So what were we talking about? We're talking about... yeah, the issues of the East. Let's give you a look at this. Oh, capital, stunning estate. Who's the happier couple? Not a bad entrance. We're not going to go further than this, but we might as well have a look. Anyway, that's Vork. About as period as Australia gets, really. But yeah. It's also a modern history museum. Very nice. Anyway. Let's go. It's worth having a look at. I'm not going to walk up there while there's a wedding on. No matter how much you pay me, I ain't walking up there. And so, yes, they go to the one of the waters of peace. But what's above the waters of peace that they experience in Nirvana? Divine breath. Okay, what's divine breath? Faith is divine breath, but what else is it? Oh, it's movement. Okay, it's impulse. What does that mean though, fundamentally? This divine breath, which I experience and you can experience in this process of
Christian initiation, this hesychism and theosis. What is that? There in the waters before it, of the calmed, completely calmed mind picture of the senses until it becomes annihilated. But what's this breath? Impulse. What is the ramifications of that though? Divine will. What's the ramification of divine will? Well, it's something that you're supposed to do here, not to go and dissolve being, not to check out, but that that's not an illusion. It's you're here to do something to save the situation. So the divine breath, the divine will is moving somewhere. It's moving towards him. He is already waiting at the end of time. He is the end of time. That's the difference. There in the peace, it is a genuine ecstasy when it happens, or ecstasy when it happens. But it's the breath. What's that? It's divine will, like I said, which means it's about saving. It's about, there's a point to things. It's not an illusion. That's what we've been getting on here. We're here to do something, to move towards him, prodigal son returning home. But also, as we know, the eschaton, the new Adam. Well, if you imitate him, you also don't just return to the Father, it's helping others as well. So there's a mission here. Everyone has this providential purpose, this divine breath that you can experience, which becomes grace. Everyone has a secret name. Everyone has a secret mission. You were given an arbitrary name when you were born from inside temporality. You experience push from spiritual necessity, from astrological influences from the archetypes, from everything of the past and what has been. You can overcome all that, those determinisms, which are, that's what fate actually is. That's what the Wanderer is talking about in the Anglo-Saxon poem. He's talking about a river, weird, pushing like ice, and there's nothing you can do. That's because of his sin. It's because of the memory, but also collective memory that extends beyond the individual that's always there. That's weird, but it's a pushing from the past, from the first beginning, spiritual necessity. Of all these influences we've been talking about, their own desires, but also a karmic one based on your sin. Karma just meant, like I've said many times, just means destiny. A destination based on what has been. And so, what are we doing? Where was I going with that? It's getting outside of that. It's escaping it. To not escape, to save. It's getting outside of the eternal recurrence of woe to your true future. And so everyone has an arbitrary mission. I had one myself, assigned to myself. It's so hard to know what's true. You do all the practices of the philosophers and still it's not really enough. You know, you read all the E-right figures, you read all the philosophers, you read Heidegger, it's still not enough. There's still this missing luster, there's still this missing, not just about meaning, but there's still this missing certainty that it cannot provide. Even episteme cannot provide. That only comes through something deeper than the certainty of rationality and the certainty of things that make sense, of logic and the necessary and sufficient conditions, the defining the rigid edges of formal logic. And what logic do we move towards that gives us this certainty? Material logic. What does that material logic mean? Ah, wow. Okay, the human can actually have contact with the essence of all things, essence of objects, outside of just the senses, but in deeper faculties you can experience the essence of a thing, a tree, whatnot. That's actually something that was more possible for someone like Plato, or at least he remembered it. He remembered the possibility of that. Again, all he had though was kind of, the philosophers had something that is similar to nature mysticism, in the sense that they were looking to trying to get to the close to the essence of the object through all their work, and which you could say is achieved by, which you could say was achieved by Plato at the end of it, if the seventh letter is true. You could look that up now if you wanted to. He says in that seventh letter that all my previous works basically amounted to nothing, or that the matters I'm currently concerned with, my works dealt with nothing of the matters I currently concern myself with, Plato's seventh letter says. What does that mean? Matters, fundamentally material, fundamentally not like solid object, but the essence of things, meaning mysticism. And so all that work of abstracting from his memory of what the good, true and beautiful are, he thought meant nothing compared to the matters he then concerns himself with. And he talks about, in that letter, the experiencing of the flash of insight coming from it. And so that is fundamentally, I don't think he's experienced it. There's no beatific vision back then, before Christ. It's gnosis, you could say, episteme. Comes from Sophia. What is that then? Well, it's philosophia, loving Sophia. Sophia is actually a being. And some believe you could say, she incarnates as Mary Sophia. Let it be with me according to your word, Lord. Virginal nature. That's true. But look at this seventh letter, friends, and tell me I was a dramatist. I know if one was to fake a letter, I've seen fakes before. People have written fake accounts of Christ from Romans, right? Of the Christian period. You can just tell they're fake. I'll give more information than just tell. You can see that they are based on the motive. It seems like they're trying to achieve something. This is called subtext. You can see a subtext behind things based on how people articulate things. And this is why they say you don't bother trying to lie to an actor unless you are, you understand these things, unless you're a director. Anyway, don't lie anyway, but don't try lie to an actor, because they know subtext. That you have to be very good at understanding the subtext. What does that mean? Well, what's subtext? Let me give you an example. You could be talking about something like, I want to eat this banana. The subtext, here's a way of doing subtext. I want to eat this banana. You know what I mean? If it's about something gross. That's a obvious reproductive subtext. You could bring into that, right? If you give it a certain intonation, you can articulate a subtext. You could say, what he's really saying is, I want to do that gross thing. Anyway, I don't even know why that came up. It's just as an easy example of, when someone's talking about something else, even though they're using the surface literal interpretation is different. But the point is, understanding motive really well, trying to work out motive, is what drama is about. Read that seventh letter, and it's just too specific, too relevant to the truth of the matter. It's so complicated to invent a true situation that appears true, really complicated without logical holes. And you understand this from writing drama. And so I can tell you, really it becomes an instinct. I mean, I'm asking you to take it on faith, really, but in terms of does the dramatist know? But someone who used to be, anyway, I'm not that anymore because it's just propaganda, but fundamentally, that letter's authentic. I couldn't find any ulterior motive, but I've seen things about Jesus which people that have written accounts for reasons, maybe they thought they were doing good about Romans, and it just looks like, oh, you're just trying to use it as historical evidence, or try to make it look like historical evidence. And so yeah, look it up, 7th letter of Plato. The things I concern myself with, the matters I currently concern myself with are. And so, to say he was a mystic, he wasn't up until the end of his life. That's quite true, he's not, until the end of his life, when he experienced this. Where are we? We're going to walk onward to... Oh, we're going to go back this way then, and turn right. See how far we get. Walk to Watson's Bay. Find somewhere to sit down. Oh yeah, I see. So I'll turn right here to the left. I'll check those chats maybe. All right, nice map. Yes, it seems to be good. At least you can see where I'm going. I'm going north on that map now. Okay, hopefully this is still coming through. It's no breakup. Yep. Okay. Maybe you can face forward for a bit. And I'll keep talking. Okay. What were we saying? Actually, probably find it easier to talk when it's pointed at me. Like maybe you might like to see some of these buildings where we are. This real estate is in prime real estate. Millions. Prime. I think this is the most expensive city to live in, from memory. The old Sydney. Yeah. Okay. So what were we talking about? We were talking about the primordial tradition. And so you can see where we went there, where we were going with that. Leads one to see that the only way is Christ, in that you just have to look at their original documents to see that it's different, that perennialism is not true. And so anyone who reads Valentin Tomberg thinking that he's being very nice and giving all the love to paganism and the truth that's within that and in the East, what he does though in the text is he allows you, in Meditations on the Tarot and Lazarus Come Forth, what he does is allow you to draw the conclusions based on the logical consistencies and inconsistencies. He allows you to see that, like I mentioned, he'll explain what the beatific vision is. He'll explain the difference, say, with the exaltation He won't mention Judaism, but he'll explain what Judaism is, and that it is, it doesn't have the Savior, and then he'll explain the problem of exaltation, and you'll draw the connection yourself and say, oh, without the incarnation, that can't work. He just leaves out the part and allows you to draw your own conclusion. And what is that doing? The same thing with the East, is that he's very kind to them and everything. And so a lot of people would read his work and say, oh no, he supports our position, or he's okay with our position. No. That's why so many people convert from their paganism when reading his book. He allows people to discover, by explaining the issues of ecstasy on its own, the issues of, and with quoting the primary text, showing that nirvana is before the primordial breath, and showing that it's about depersonalization. But that's what happens, is they end up drawing their own conclusions. But that is the best way to do things, because love loses when it's made to not be present. The good loses when it's made to not be present. And so when you see all these people battling online, that does have its place, but fundamentally it's completely tied up with the will to power. And what he does so masterfully in that, like I said, allows you to make your own conclusion by finding the inconsistencies in the position of the things that he reveals, and realize through that, because you're listening to him, because he's being kind and showing all there is good about those different religions anyway. And then you come to see it's true of Christ. Otherwise you just ignore him otherwise. I'm just checking where we're going again. Okay, it's this way. And that's why you see so many people read that and end up Catholics, end up Christians. And so that's why I'm constantly telling people, listen, pagans, just read Valentin's work. Read Meditations on the Tarot. It's not some trick though. It's just that's how the Master would do it. That's how the Lord would do it if he was here, in a similar way. Not in will to power, not in attacking like online apologetics. No. Just through the truth. Through the truth, allow people to draw their own conclusions. And see, in a way, I'm kind of doing the wrong thing. In some sense, by articulating, no, here is the problem. Well, it's a way of doing it. It's really just speaking the truth, but without a careful kindness. And that's why you see I've had people who are pagan hermeticists, right, who obviously deny Christ, or try to and have large followings, 200,000 people, try to do everything they can to stay away from him. They've obviously read Tomberg. I've even seen them quote him, and Steiner. They quote Steiner too. Obviously they haven't read him deeply enough, because if they did, they'd see that there is nothing without Christ. I've found people with massive audiences who have blocked me. Blocked me just in advance. What? Who are these people? Never even talked to them. That's because they obviously saw me articulating. Okay, it's raining now. I'm going to get under this tree. I mean, if you have to block, then you mustn't have much of a relationship with what you are seeking. Gosh, you shouldn't really be afraid. Like in advance, not even hearing me say anything, not attacking them, because I don't waste my time attacking people, but I will talk about what the truth is. But all the will to power stuff I stay away from. But yeah, so we'll just keep going here. Whoops, the old gimbal is saving itself, I see. Alright, I have to do that. There we are. Bang. Alright, we've got to find someone to sit down so we can start our reading for today. Can't be that far away. Just got to oh shit, I can't turn that on now. I have to look at my own face. Alright. How far away are we? Oh shit, we're still pretty far away. Let's keep going. Onward. Alright, we're back in. And so, let me just make sure this is back on. Right. Actually, I shouldn't need to make sure it's back on. I think it's probably working. And we were talking about, well, high time, high cause, high space, or sacred space. That is what truly is honouring the mother and father, is to disclose where the temporal meets the eternal. Oh, not too much. And so fundamentally, what does that mean? It means you're surrendering the forces that the serpent gave us, the forces that Aristotle operates so abstractly. He's the first abstract person. In fact, he defines philosophers thereafter as someone who defines and abstracts. And so after him it becomes an exercise in that. Further and further abstracting and defining of things and given form by what came before. And there's a dying in this, it's a dying crystallization in this until Christ comes. And that philosophy continues though with the philosophers and actually infects and involves itself also in Christianity. And then in a sense it becomes, as we talked about before, gets baptized somewhat by Aquinas. Aquinas baptizes Aristotle to a degree, and what's his name? Augustinian? He baptizes Plato as well. But this mode of Aristotle, that mode is a fundamental mode that exists. It's not something he invents. It's a mode of this being, this here yonder being that you are, this openness space that you are, because you are also the space that's in front of you that you see. You also participate in the way it looks and presences, among other things, among primordial, among archetypes, among the things of spiritual necessity, which also give form to it, of course, and among the Angeloi and the Creator, and all these other things giving form to it, and its semi-illusory element. This mode that Aristotle is exercising in concept making, rigidifying, is a mode of the serpent. Doesn't mean we don't do it, because it's all been, Christ has redeemed us, but it is fundamentally a reliance on experiment with. Because you know how we talked about earlier when we said the difference between dialectic and philosophy? They're both the same thing, but dialectic is a first run through. Well, what are you doing when you're philosophizing? You're running it through again and again and again and again and again to define and refine its necessary and sufficient conditions, its characteristics. That conceptualizes, it creates a concept based on judgments. These are all limited things, aren't they? It's a mode of our being that the serpent gave us. That it's a mode that comes from evolutionary grinding. But there's other things, aren't there? The things we had before the fall. Providence, the future, guidance, direct guidance of what to do. Episteme, gnosis of the essence of things. And Plato actually understands a bit of this. He remembers a bit of it. Aristotle doesn't at all. He's completely in the mode of the grinding. But Plato does. That's what he's talking about with true, good and beautiful. He's articulating the things of these old faculties that he actually doesn't have anymore. Only at the end does he experience some of it. And so that's what we're involved with. And that's what the tradition, the revelation, comes through the prophets, through these faculties, to show us the way to resume, to reconnect with faith, hope and love. Divine breath, mysticism, a direct connection with revelatory action, which is the future. What's revelatory action? It's grace. You can feel grace come in and influence your breath, but you have to be very concentrated in a passive active state, in concentration without effort and deep hesychism. By honouring the mother and the father is that providence. But to reach him, you have to honour and remember the tradition, what has been brought in of revelation, what's been brought inside, you could think about it like that, after the fall, after all that occurs and all has occurred. That remembrance is of what has been, that isn't of this mixed water we've been talking about. Because of what God did for us, it allowed for a tradition that wasn't a mixing of the waters above and below the firmament. It was actually a ingression from the eternal. So when we remember that, which is the liturgical calendar and the rituals of the church and everything that's in the Gospels, when we remember that and we celebrate Christmas every year, when we go through all the different rituals of the liturgical calendar of the different Christ's winter, summer, autumn, spring aspects, it presences him collaboratively, but it's not something that's done without permission on the other side. It has to be something that he wills, of course, but it is not just memory, it's a presencing of what's available inside. You could think about it like that, a way of thinking about it. And so it becomes possible to have faith, hope and charity, to have access to divine breath, divine light, which is knowings, a deeper knowings of the essence of truth, gnosis, you could call it. And what is this other than what is talked about in the Bible? Is it Paul that says? Paul says that we can know the breadth and length and height and depth of things. And what that means is that depth is everything we talk about in it's hesychism, it's theosis, it's looking for the essence of things. That's depth, Christianity. Mysticism, actually experiencing hierarchies and the Lord, mystically as spiritual touch and through the heart. But the length and the breadth, that is gnosis, that's what it is. And so it's not something I'm talking about, isn't something that's not biblical. So that becomes possible. So divine light, that's what hope is. So because hope is gained through, we have knowledge of the eschaton through hope. We have knowledge of providence and the omega point, the end where Christ is, the final cause which ingresses as an agent of growth of where we're supposed to become towards the ideal or idea. These are Platonic terms, but ideal or idea that God has had for us for eternity, which is the best that we can be. And that's where he is, because he's perfect. Christ is. So but just think about it. I mean, people might wonder how one draws a connection between the everyday experience that we are. And I've sort of done this before, this little exercise where okay, so we're here. You've got this everyday presencing, you're looking at the screen now, you're looking at me, and the world looks at it as this. I still have that. It's all a depth to everything at the same time that I've described before, the phenomenology I've described before, which I'm not going to go into. But so it's an eternal meeting that. You still see things, but I've described the phenomenology before. But the point is, there's this everydayness of the way being presences and is. And we say, I've just got what's present to me, and I've got memory. I have access to memory of my limited memories of what I've experienced in existence. Okay. This future you talk about, Scott, what's that mean? I don't know anything of that. I don't have access to it. I can project things through my limited understanding of the past and my faculties. I can invent and of what could be. And it's actually true of what happened with Goethe, and this isn't the full divine faculties we're talking about here, and a being. But when you get so good like he was at observing nature, and Steiner too, is that you start to see the spiritual necessity and push underneath the objects of the world. And so you can predict with a reasonable certainty, or just have an idea of what's going to happen the next day. That doesn't include providence, though. That doesn't include the true ingression. But you can predict what's going to happen. You get better and better at that, and Steiner articulates that. But we're talking about something deeper than that. Where's this future? For us, we don't see it. What we're familiar, okay, we know dreams, okay. We know when we do certain things, we have certain things we want to do, and we get pushed off course. We get pushed off course. And we don't achieve a certain thing on a certain day. That always happens, even still happens to me. We still sin. There's something down there that pushes other agendas, that pushes other actions. Even though we're trying to do something, we have a certain thing we're trying to do. Okay, so there's this place that's unconscious to me, it's unknown to me. Right. So you dig a bit into that. So there's a future. There's this unconscious place. I experience sometimes in dreams perhaps, and something I might see in a dream happens to become. Odd. Rare but odd. There is, if you do enough dream analysis, you'll see a theme starting to emerge, and sometimes things will happen because of it above chance, right? But again, you don't need to do that work to disclose this. It's just trying to get you from the regular the things of the world and everyday being that we are, all this stuff around me that you're watching, underneath this is the operation of something deeper that we actually have access to, and dreams speak to it, right? how's that the future? Okay. Knowing, but even of depth, things that we don't know about what's around us. We have to say that there's there's a temporal outside to the objects. There's things going on that we don't have a theory for, right? It's just unknown to us, that are touching us. Something is interacting with me that I don't know, even if it's just from the unconscious. But even out there in the world, dark energy, whatever modern science is articulating at the moment. We know from the meta study of the parapsychological experiments from nature that there's an interaction above chance between people. Okay, so there's something operating between people. We know that. We know from Jung's work on synchronicity, there's an acausal, you can't say it 100% certain, but there is enough empirical observation to say there's a connecting principle between people beyond the intersubjective, you could call it, right, if you wish. That's unknown to you. You can't see it, your senses can't see it, only in dreams do you interact with it. Through these practices, as Steiner has experienced, even through divination, you will recognize, if you don't ask arbitrary, stupid questions like you're doing a scientific experiment, and I'm not recommending divination, by the way, because you have to give that stuff up for the deepening relationship of mysticism with the Lord. It's like opening the cracks of a door. But it'd prove it. The I Ching, for instance, proves itself to the person using it. It's just obvious. It's above chance. So it's not arbitrary, and it's objective, yet it's separate from you. The point is, this place has not yet reached your knowing. Even more so, collective human knowing. Okay. And so if you look deeper into the depths of the psyche and concentration without effort and the Jesus prayer, those exercises, collaboratively, you're getting towards that unknowing space, towards the essence of things. And so, say a dream gives you something before it happens. That means there's something in temporality with us that has not yet become. This is spiritual necessity. That's what I'm talking about. The unconscious is not just a thing of your subjective desires or a more material layer. It's just more objective. It's your being reaches out from you invisibly, from what's conscious to you. It's underneath world. It's underneath what's conscious. And so if you study these things long enough, like I said, a dream you can get communicated with before something occurs and happens to occur. But what does that mean fundamentally? You're looking into it. Well, it means there's something around us that has not yet actually become. It's new, and that goes not just for something that's relative to you, that the world doesn't know about yet, even just events. Before the happening of events and time, there is this spiritual necessity that influences what will eventually happen, that you can disclose. So if it hasn't reached us yet, what does that mean? There's this thing in this unconscious that I have access to, even in the smallest way, that hasn't reached us yet. It will be a future event. We don't know exactly what that event will be unless we see through these things that happen, synchronicities. We locked the door, intuition, we locked the door, and when there was a murderer, we avoided this thing. So many examples of this. There's even scientific evidence of these phenomena. Of course, because the world isn't an object, the world isn't a clock, it resists being scientifically investigated like that. But nevertheless, there are hints. And of course, the Lord, we're supposed to come to him freely. That's why he said, keep the miracle secret. Because it interferes with the freedom of people, the prodigal son, to return. It's like a push of power against him to just reveal himself. We become his extension as we're bowing down in fear, not coming back to him in love. The point is, again, I know I keep digressing a bit, but beneath this, well, it hasn't reached us yet. So what is it? Well, it's the future. So you have access to what hasn't yet become. So there is this temporal space of this becoming that you can access. That's the unconscious. It reaches beyond you, not just in space, but in time. Now, there's a limit to that, because the true future, because there's spiritual influences that pushing towards a destination, they're already temporal though. They are involved with what is already inside, let's say. The true future though is completely clean of all that, and his providence is Jesus. He's completely innocent, sinless, entered the world sinless, because he's God. And so that's the true providence that's even beyond just temporal becoming. And you can not use him like a tool, like you would of this temporal becoming space when you're interacting with dreams, through your angel's help, because they're always trying to help you, bring you closer to him. You can ask him, because he is the future. Is this true? Although I'd be very careful about asking what will be. I'd be more asking what I should do and what's true than asking that, because of these, that's not something you could ask. But again, this is God we're talking about here, and also knowing what will come to be. You've got retrocausal issues. It better be some question that you must know, and you better be wanting to help people. It's something to help people with, if you're going to ask about that. But the point is, he is the future, so he'll lead you to something good, because he is good and knows what you believes in you more than anyone believes in you, than your parents, than anyone. He has more faith in humanity than anyone, and will never give it up until the end of time. He said that. I'll be with you always until the end. Man, how profound. How profound when you see it. And here we are, this is Watson's Bay. Here we are. I guess I could pick a place here. I guess it's probably a bit late, but maybe I can't sit there, that particular place, but I think down here we can probably find somewhere. Watson's Bay. Terrible day, but I remember coming here as a child. You can be nostalgic with me remembering. Alright. You can see why it's quite good for little children. Calm beach in a cove, protected from the rough seas. Because we're not far away from the Pacific Ocean here, it's just to the right, it's just this way. Not far. Yeah, we'll find somewhere to sit here, I think, and we're going to do our Rudolf Steiner reading that might even disclose and reveal things about what we've been talking about, because we're going into, also in that reading, into similar issues. I will be with you until the end of time. He is, friends. He keeps his promises. It's true. I've been in the Spurg mindset, the scientism mindset, the Aristotelian mindset. There's a deeper layer of truth, though. Truth. Not to feel better, but because it's true. And reveals himself as much. If you come back as the prodigal son, you have to come back. first. It's not the arrogant atheist saying, prove yourself to me. No. That's not good for you. It's got to be about your moral development. I've got to check this is still working. Because the Starlink might not be... that one, I'm not really sure that works very well. But let's have a look. Probably is. Let's have a look. Well, it seems to still be working. Yeah. Well, let's sit down. Find somewhere to sit down. Do our reading. And we'll get the ferry back, I think. Depending on when it arrives. Don't know if I want that music though. Oh, we can probably sit on the wharf and do it, actually. Yeah. I might do that. Or Doyle's. Let's have a look at this first. Maybe. I don't know. I remember coming to this place years ago. Maybe. It's this one. Let's have a look. Just fish and chips, friends, don't you think? Where's the table service? Sorry, I just got to find somewhere to go first. I want to get something to eat. I might grab something to eat from there. At the wharf, sit there or here. Probably about to close on Friday, 5:40 p.m. or 3 p.m. I have to get takeout. I'm going to get some chips. I'm going to sit on the wharf and do our reading for today. What we're saying? Yes. And so a connection with both those things, worship and labor, remembrance and providence, because these things aren't done just with conscience, because you reconnect with objective conscience. And it's not just about that, of course. There's a whole tradition to engage with. Hi. Let's get a flathead. I'll take one. That's it. Oh, tartar sauce. Cheers. Thank you. Are they your seats out there? Okay. Can you bring it in? I'll collect it. Right. unfortunate music coming from that friggin' that I swear. That stupid pub there. Can you hear that? If you can't hear it, then this will be fine. I'll just do it from here. That'll be a good view. Back this way towards the water, or not. I still have to go pick this food up though. Can't believe they don't bring it out. Unbelievable. Unbelievable, friends. Irradiated by a satellite internet. Alright. We're gonna have something to eat. That hasn't been too bad. That's been alright for a rained out day. Not bad at all. Just wait to get my food, guys, and then we'll start. Well, maybe we won't do it here. Okay, wait over here. Find somewhere else. Thank you. Cheers. No worries. There we are. Here's the feed. Where do we sit though? Sorry about this, friends. It's a bit of silence before actually figuring out what we're going to do here. But of course, I don't know if it's going to start raining. So I want to get something under cover, but I also don't want noise around. Let's see what's down here a bit. don't think that wharf would have anything, unless there's a restaurant there, maybe. So that's pretty funny. Until they see if they kick me out. Order a drink. If they come. Actually, I might go in and order a drink and they can't kick me out. Oops. Hey man, how you going? Can I just get a Coke soda?
From the tap or the can?
The can's fine, yeah. Thanks. You don't mind if I sit there, right, if I'm ordering something?
Yeah,
I would have ordered some food, but the kitchen's shut, so I wouldn't have pressed the button.
so not all of the kitchen's shut. We still have this menu.
Oh, okay. It's too late now. I would have happily ordered it. It said 3 p.m. So I know. But so there's a different type of menu open at that time. Anyway, I'm buying something.
You want a glass with
Nah, it's alright. I'll just have a can. Oh shit! But I just wrote down my code.
Yeah, we should have it.
Like this to this one. So whoops! I have to cancel that card. Thanks. I'll be cancelling my card when I get home. Get another one. That's the danger when live streaming. Let's go over here a bit.
On your side, Emma, with the loose.
I reckon in this weather no one's going to turn up here. And this will be perfect. Alright. Friends. Here we go. Rudolf Steiner's Redemption of Thinking, finally. If there's anyone still watching, there's probably a few people. Let's get this set up. Yes. Here we are, what a view. What a day, what a day. That ain't bad. What's that? Oh, you got the city there in the background. That's pretty cool. Happy with that. Let me eat this first. This is what we're dealing with. We'll get to it, friends. Just let me eat. This is what we're reading. Steiner's Redemption of Thinking. After I've or at least eaten something. Something. Yes. It's a cracking view in the sun. It's not so bad. You get the scale of God's creation. In fact, I always like it when it's cloudy. It seems like there's so much scale to the happening of what's going on when you have clouds in the distance, or when it goes to sunset and has that epic quality. pretty good. It's a bit tough. I just had a little bit. It's not very good. $30. I mean, surely when you buy a house that has an incredible view, or if you live on the east, in the eastern suburbs, like here, around here somewhere, you must get sick of the view. You must just not care eventually. It's not something that's understood when you sell it. Although with the ocean, it's very important. There is a relativity to things, though, as we talked about before. The everydayness creeps up on you. And you understand it when you understand the objects of the world are predisposed to you. You have a new day, but there's a projection of concepts over it, so it's all stale, especially in modernity, as we talked about a million times. That's part of the certainty, of the false certainty of the scientific picture. That projects a certainty, as if there is no outside, as if there is no eternal. As if we know everything. That's the arrogance of it. Even as if we can stop AI. We can somehow make it safe. With a kind of pathetic human socialism, kind of pathetic human interventionism. And don't get me wrong, I'm pro some of that. I'm pro it when it's guided by him, not us. From the limited world picture, it's just it's holding back of the ravages of the forces of spiritual necessity. Is it? Is a socialism, a humanist socialism. But the idea that we could possibly do that is ridiculously arrogant. The idea that we could solve anything on our own. Yeah, we can do the grinding, but the idea we can put the process of technological advancement and what's going to happen, we can make that safe. Even the process of nature, we've mastered a lot of things. We haven't ever done that on our own. Alright. I'm pretty much done eating this. Hope you enjoyed watching me chow down. Entertaining live TV. Let's get on to this reading. I still can. It'll be dark soon. Alright. Well, yeah, a bit boring. Let's continue our reading for a while though, at least for the sake of it. Okay. We'll pick up where we left off last week with this. We'll read to 5. Oh, I don't want to go beyond that. Anyway. So this book is about mostly what we've been talking about today is about the emergence of thinking and the defining, as we talked about with Aristotle, of philosophy and how that develops and how that's redeemed by Aquinas and Aquinas' influences and what affects it. And so, let's start. Augustine was a forerunner. We today regard many forms of expression as mere conventional phraseology, but Klopstock in the 18th century was in earnest, and not merely turning a phrase when he began his Messiah with the words, "Sing, immortal soul, sinful man's salvation." This is where we left off last week, where it was about how it occurred for Homer, is that they were inspired by the muses. It wasn't an individual sitting in his room writing about things, inspired by it. Words were evaluatively powerful and inspirited other people. That's why the gospel is called gospel, good spell. So when Homer bids the muse sing in place of himself, it's not just a conventional expression. For him, that's what's happening, that's what does happen. Although it doesn't happen that way now, because in a sense there's sort of something, it's passive active for us. That was becoming completely passive, in a sense being possessed to a degree. And so later, after this kind of possession, it happens with Homer. And if you don't know who Homer is, he is the poet of Greek mythos. Before Aristotle, before Plato, before the end of the first beginning, before the dying. The beginning of the dying, you could call it. That we're in the death, or past the death now modernity, but anyway. When Homer bids the muse sing in place of himself, it's not just a conventional expression. Later, the feeling of individuality awoke in mankind, and Klopstock spoke out of his inner consciousness when he said, "Sing, immortal soul, of sinful man's salvation." Individual, though. And so, when he begins his Messiah poem with the word "Sing, immortal soul," that is to say, sing thou individual being that livest in each man as his individuality. That's fundamentally different from Homer and his state. It's similar, but it's different in terms of the development of man since those times, not to mention Christ's intervention. And so now Klopstock is someone that's a 18th century, which is a long way away from Homer. But there's a different state. And he said, "Sing, immortal soul," not sing through me and possess me, muse. No. Sing, individual being that lives in each man and his individuality. That's what he's really saying. And so Steiner's whole thesis is tracking this process of development and emergence of this and change of consciousness, just like Heidegger tracks the difference of change in being, the in-between, because he doesn't make a distinction between the anthropos and the object. He picks the in-between, the two things. So now Augustine was one of the first of those who really felt that "Sing thou, individual being that livest in every man in his individuality." Augustine, who was, of course, we know, the church tradition. That's what this book has been talking about in previous streams when we've been reading. We might read this sooner in streams later because people probably switch off and just walking around. But Augustine was one of the first of those who really felt the individual nature of man with its personal responsibility. This constituted the dilemma in which he lived. The individual striving after the sense-free spiritual became part of his own experience. Sense-free, underneath the senses transcending the senses. Thus there existed within him a subjective conflict. Now, the understanding of Platonism, which had still been possible for Augustine, had so deeply influenced him in later times and dried up. As mentioned in previous reading, Plotinus was a hangover from a previous age. The end, Augustine was a prelude of a development that was to occur. So the way it was for Plotinus couldn't be for the way it was for Augustine. After the Greek philosophers, the last followers of Plato and Plotinus had been compelled to go into exile in Persia, where they established their successors in the academy of Jundi Shapur or Shapur. This capacity of looking into the spirit world died away. As he's talked about before, it's a one-legged seagull. Died away. Closes into the fog, just like the city is now enclosing into this fog. But that was the atavistic clairvoyance, the dangerous one, without purification. It dried up though. The Sibyls and the Pythias, who were the soothsayers, the oracles, it's said of the oracle at Delphi said near the end, probably around this time, that philosophers were kicked out, said, "My wells have run dry." Good. That had to happen. And it's good that happened. Because it's going back to they're polluted waters. They were always in polluted waters, as the oracles were constantly, their interpretations were constantly betraying the people who were listening to them, whether it was interpreted this way or that, tricking them, elementals. So, this capacity was drying up in Western Europe, and all that remained was that filtered form of Greek philosophy which Aristotle had bequeathed to posterity. So the thing that Plato remembered, talks about, that's dried up, that you can't access it, there's not even a memory of it. It's just Aristotle's, as we've been talking about all today, it's just Aristotle's category, Aristotle's metaphysics, it's just Aristotle's definition and abstracting of being, it's the bones and bark of abstracting that's left. That's it. And that's essentially, if it wasn't for Christ and religion, it'd be worse than it currently is in modernity, as the dead husk of the way, of no longer a way or a truth or a life, no longer a direct relation to truth. Everything is through, as I've talked about in a video of mine called the Escape the Thought Regime. I talk about it, we have no contact with truth, we've lost contact with value, we've lost contact, which means life, and we no longer know the way or where to go. It's just a push and provoking of what has been. So there's no way, truth, and life. But that also means no good, true, and beautiful. But it's not just about meaning. Everyone's saying, how do we get meaning back? No, it's about truth as well. There's a truth crisis. But not shit-lib scientism, the actual ground of truth that you can contact, who happens to be, of course, Christ. So this goes back that far, this problem, all the way to Aristotle. He was the end of that first beginning. And so both Steiner and Heidegger are getting at the same problem, the same beginning of death. So the Asian offshoot of Greek philosophy came back eventually to Europe in a roundabout way, as we shall see, via Arabia. But it had no longer any consciousness of an actual idea world, and there was no trace of Platonism in it.
In Western Europe, therefore, the situation arose that man had now to derive the spiritual out of himself. It wasn't out there, like the concepts were formerly with the things. It wasn't with the world, it was within first. It was subjective. Consciousness has changed, the anthropos changed and developed, or even the way being is changed and developed. The situation arose that man had now to derive the spirit out of himself. Like I said, that he could only produce the spiritual as an abstraction from his own experience. That's what occurred. It was felt that when a man sees lions and thereupon forms the concept lions, when he sees wolves and thereupon forms the concept wolves, when he sees human beings and thereupon forms the concept men, these concepts exist only in himself and arise out of his own individual consciousness. And so, because of the changes, you see where Kantianism emerges, where the categories are generalizations from the things of the world and observations in the world. Well, although he is neither subject or object, neither. Well, anyway. So I think this is the problem of nominalism and realism. Whether the categories are something, whether the archetypes are something outside. But no, I mean, this is the way being presences to us, is that it seems as if it's an abstraction. But for them, that wasn't that. There were for them observable. It was something that could be seen. The universals were something that could be seen. Whereas to us, it just seems like it's an abstraction. So this idea, which soon began to have a very far-reaching significance, would have been meaningless for Platonism. But the living connection with Platonism, which, as we have seen, helped Augustine in his understanding of the mystery of Christ Jesus, had been completely severed by the closing of the schools of philosophy in Athens by Justinian in 529. As a result of this, the problem of knowledge and reality became more and more baffling for many people. They expressed it thus: in the Christian traditions and scriptures which we have received, we are told of the spiritual world. We also experience out of our own individual being sense-free concepts. That's raining. That are abstractions from the material. How are they related to the real nature of the universe? Are these concepts that we form for ourselves only something which have come into existence in ourselves, or are they connected with the world outside us? And that's where Kantianism comes in. Is that we can't, he would say that we can't fundamentally know. That there isn't epistemological contact. But at the same time, they were the deepest and most earnest concerns of mankind and of the whole medieval church, both in their abstractness and in their urgency. These questions presented themselves in the minds of Albertus Magnus and Thomas Aquinas. Later, in an even more abstract form, that became the point at issue between realism and nominalism, like I was talking about. So the great question then, which the medieval scholar we know is derived from concepts which can only arise in themselves out of our own experience as individuals. On the one hand, you have the theory of predestination, into which Augustine had shaped his Platonism, with its submergence of the individual and humanity as a whole, together with the belief that only part of humanity, and they only through God's predestinating decree, could share in his grace and inherit eternal life, while the other part was doomed to eternal damnation from the first, whatever it might do. On the other hand, there was the awakening consciousness of human individuality, out of which man had been able to acquire the content of his own knowledge. But that awakening consciousness of individuality had not been strong enough in Augustine to modify his dread concept of predestination. That's a good way of putting it, his dread concept.
For Augustine, mankind as a whole remained the reality. For Thomas Aquinas, each separate man was an individual. How then do the viewpoints fit together? The cosmic process bound up with Augustine's view of predestination and the actual experience of the separate human individuality. How can the fact of all that the individual is able to achieve for himself be reconciled with this predestination that you're just bound to be? How can any effort of anything be worth anything if, wow, it really is closing into the fog there, the city. How can it be anything? How can individuality be anything? Any effort be anything if all is predestined? How can the fact that all that is individual is able to achieve for himself be reconciled with Augustine's total rejection of human individuality? For it was because he did not wish the idea of human individuality to develop that Augustine formulated the doctrine of predestination. That's a deep claim that he makes there, attributing his motive to that. In order to preserve the concept of humanity as a whole, he suppressed entirely the idea of human individuality. That's a big claim. Does he back it up? Thomas Aquinas, on the other hand, when he faced the scholastic problem, had before his mind only the individual man thirsting for knowledge, because he's further down the track. Thomas had to seek to understand human knowledge and its relationship to the universe in the light of that very fact of human individuality, which Augustine had excluded from his treatment of humanity. It's not sufficient for us to express this in an abstract way, merely as a problem of reason and logic. No, it must be grasped with the whole heart, with the whole human personality. Only then shall we be able to see how heavy the burden of this problem weighed upon those men who carried it into the 13th century. And it is a brutal problem, this issue. Wow, the grey rain curtain completely covers Sydney City as the sun begins to set.
And the lights come on into this restaurant that is a warm glow on this winter's day. But that's the end of the lecture, friends. I don't think I'll start lecture 2. We'll continue that next week and continue it soon, as we go through the last 2 lectures of this redemption of thinking. But that's the end of the first lecture. But some very interesting ideas there of the problem of the developing individual and the clash with that, and this idea of predestination, which is wrong because it denies effort. It's effort and grace, not grace on its own. But friends, as it gets quiet here, I know we started late, we've only been going for about 3 hours. Oh, I know more people are watching now too. Well, friends, I don't know. Should I keep reading? It's getting late here. I'll probably have to make my way home. I hope that was enjoyable. It was a short reading. I'll make sure we get here on time next time. Unless that ferry, if I can get to that ferry in time, I might be able to give you guys a ride home on the ferry. Let me see. It looks like a bus is still going to be much faster. That could go anywhere. That could go manly. Maybe if I try circular care. Circular care. Yeah, even the bus will be faster.
All right, friend. I think I'm going to turn off the thing if anyone wants to say goodbye.
Thank you for joining. Yeah, I think we're gonna go, guys. It's been a great day. We'll make sure everything is set up with our new bits and pieces. I'm not sure where we'll be next week. There'll be another lecture. On Friday morning at about 11 o'clock at 10 Australian time. That's night time. That's night time in America, and that's early. And night time in England. Friday, and then we'll again on the next day we'll have another IRL stream, and we'll make sure we get to the live lecture much sooner. So sorry, the book much sooner, so it's not so boring, or it's not so walking around aimlessly looking for somewhere to sit. But anyway, I hope this rain-swept day you've enjoyed the things we've talked about and the scenes that we've explored. For now, as the sun sets and the mist disappears in Sydney and the lights disappear in the distance, I'm going to bid you fond farewell, friends, and see you next week, where we'll continue the redemption of thinking and continue our talks and our lectures. And make sure you tune into the third and final lecture on how to discern the Lord and ask the Lord questions and discern the Holy Spirit and avoid the false Holy Spirit. We're going into the depth, the mystery of joy, which is deeply profound, and this is the final lecture of it, so make sure you tune in. The other two lectures are available right now on my live page, and the most recent one I had to quickly stop and put on a normal video, so that lecture is available on just the regular video page, and that's the second lecture. So make sure you watch all three, friends, before you do anything that's mentioned in them. But I'll see you next week, everyone. I'm going to switch off.